when, let's not make it tokenistic, but let's make sure we have diversity in our teams. And make your team go, okay, tell me why this is a bad idea. Always go for the ball, not the player. I don't think we take that responsibility and that kind of care seriously enough, if I'm honest.
You talked about pace. It feels like a relentless charge towards that ever-increasing pace. Where's the line? As you look at it, where do we all kind of go, whoa, stop?
Singularity? No, I don't know. Well, I think many companies are already hitting that line, unfortunately, because it's costly. We're already seeing, the big players of this world, starting to own the technology, the capabilities, no one mentioned, no one forgotten, so to speak. There's obviously been a big case recently in media. I don't know, and I don't think we should stop. I just think we should be more aware. I don't want to sit with kind of doomsday or a tinfoil hat on in this conversation. But as I said, I want us to do it more consciously, and kind of social justice and that kind of ethical technology has always been close to my heart, and it's one that's quite difficult to actually table in more commercial organizations. And as I said, I don't think we take it seriously enough. So I don't think in any way we should stop progress. I just think we should be aware of how we apply it and where we apply it and the types of problems we'd like to solve with it. Because I think at the moment, kind of, again, just, briefly touching on AI, everyone is talking about it. No one really knows what they mean when they talk about it. As I said, we've been looking at large language models for quite a while. That's the obvious one. Then we talk generative AI is the other one that's exciting. But I think we need to go mindfully into it. And, maybe I'm going a bit off piece here, Neil, but one of the things that I'm really thinking about in that space, because I have close members of my family with dementia and Alzheimer's, and there is a point to this. One of the key things to kind of, that they're finding out to combat or, kind of stagnate the kind of, the speed of cognitive decline is that you keep getting challenged, intellectual challenge, you're using your brain to problem solve, etc. And I think we need to keep a close eye on how much friction we kind of keep removing from everything we do. And I'm sure we'll find other ways to stimulate ourselves. But I think from other, big, kind of technology revolutions, we've seen, physical decline in people. We're seeing obesity epidemics. We're seeing a lot of kind of physical manifestations of the fact that we're making life easier for ourselves. And I'm just very interested in seeing, well, where are we going when we're all of a sudden talking on a more cognitive level? So I think there's those things that are interesting to keep an eye on in terms of progress. And as I said, and then there's obviously the kind of, what of our, how ethical do we approach, the kind of scale of the technology that we're now applying. So yeah, maybe a little bit more doomsday than you were expecting.
No, but that's right where it is, and yeah. I love your point around the positive impact that all of this change can have on people suffering with serious or quite debilitating illness. It doesn't have to be, just sit in the corner and wait. That's not where any of these people should find themselves, and we do genuinely have a responsibility to help and support them. So I could not agree more. Talking with Paul Randall on a previous video around sustainable marketing, and he touched on how greenwashing is a real thing, and the EU are pulling out guidance and stats around false claims of product. Is that something that you see? Is that something you're combating personally?
Yes, it's like, I think most retailers will talk about how sustainable their supply chain is when we kind of know that unfortunately isn't true. And Reina Plaza, things like those things have really proved to us in recent years that we aren't looking after our supply chain. I think, the pandemic showed us how a lot of organizations have a hold over their production partners in the global south by refusing to pay for products that been produced for them, etc. We saw that. So I do think that there's a lot of hot air in that part, unfortunately. I think as well there'll be a lot of ethics washing. We'll see a lot of purpose washing. We'll start seeing, not too long ago we had, a couple of ethicists leave Google, right? So I think again we need to take it seriously. We need to kind of try and can we kind of wade through all of that and figure out what's kind of, truth is always subjective, right? But what's not to be taken in by a lot of talk.
I think we're all getting a bit better at that. I'm actually sort of checking things out next to the till now. I'm trying to check things out as opposed to grabbing them because of the really glitzy marketing. You do kind of do that.
And I think you're actually saying, sorry, so you're saying something quite important there, because with Black Friday, right? It's like, I do think what we're not aware of, every time we spend money, we are part of deciding what world we want, and that might sound very sanctimonious, but that is the truth. We make a decision when we buy a product, and we may feel that we are a drop in the ocean, but where that is one of the influences we actually have that's very direct as consumers. And I do try and think about it, but of course there's also times when you're just tired, you come, you've had a long day and you kind of grab something. But I'd love more people to check the back of the packaging, perhaps.
I'm writing down all of the little sound bites that you keep giving me, and I'm going to need a separate page. You're loading me right up here, but it's really important stuff. This is fantastic. What do you see as the difference in terms of sort of operating and maybe offering guidance and consultancy in the European markets to mainland Europe, I guess, to the UK or anywhere else?
So again, it's difficult because I think the very nature of my work is to come in because someone has a certain shape that they're missing in their processes, organization, or team. So most organizations will have the same challenges. I have obviously worked predominantly with UK companies, but also with some Europeans. And obviously I'm from Denmark, so I've worked with a couple of Danish companies and Swedish companies. I think the biggest thing I'm seeing with those companies is how their teams are treated. In many ways, I think that I see a lot in the UK, this might be very controversial, an infantilization of workforces. I have seen very much not people being taken seriously for the job they have, their opinion, their expertise. Whereas I feel there is a more autonomous way of treating roles and employees in the European companies I've been in at.
Interesting. Okay.
I will then say that from a process often and technology, we are further ahead in the UK than we are in some of the Nordics, perhaps, that I've been in at, that's not to say there aren't companies. Again, as I said, be aware, come to the caveat that I come in because someone would like to transform something, right? So that's always the caveat, I guess, to kind of to mention. But I think the workforce differentiation is really one that has struck me in later years, that I was like, I can really see a difference.
Gosh, that is significant. Why do you think that they're a little bit behind in terms of the technology? Is it a government investment thing, or is it just we'll just kind of not necessarily be leading edge? We'll wait and see where everybody else does first.
I think it has been, well, it's difficult to say. Maybe the need hasn't been there in the same way. You're also talking, if you say Denmark, it's a much smaller country, so distances are closer in terms of getting to a town center or whatever. I think there is perhaps just culturally, more love for bricks and mortar. I guess it's the shape of your economy a little bit, so I think it would be foolish for me to maybe draw any conclusions there, on perhaps a very small sample set, in fairness. But yeah, just not as mature in a lot of, payment options, things like that. It's absolutely coming, it's there now, but when, sort of 10, 15 years ago, we were definitely moving a lot quicker in the UK.
Fair enough. Okay, let's change direction a little bit. Your 20-year journey to the top. I mean, let's be frank about these things. A woman in business, a woman in tech, a woman in senior leadership roles. those are still things that we're debating now. And my own opinion is the more spotlight we put on them, we're still kind of creating a divide. Personally, is my own view. What's yours? You're in that role. You're in that seat. How's it felt for you?
I don't know if I'm at the top, but thank you very much for the compliment. I have a lot to learn still. It's difficult because I do think that women are treated differently. I do think that we still have a long way to go, and that's everything from practical kind of implementation in companies to attitudinal. I think everyone will on the surface go, no, absolutely not, and then there'll be things that kind of betray them when it comes to to actually act on it. Again, from a recent company talking about, we were, I don't know, 20 odd senior leaders in the organization, and there was 3 women, and one was people, one was marketing, and the third was me, so you kind of think about, and that was a full scale end-to-end, kind of business. So you sort of, and when kind of bringing that up, it was very much, we have other bigger problems to solve, and that's kind of still the answer you're met when you're trying to talk about kind of diversity and inclusivity. When it actually comes to crunch time, organizations will do, they're there to make money. They're there to create value, be it for shareholder, be it for investors, be it for whatever. And I think we'll go along on the route for as long as you can prove that it makes money for the organization. When it becomes less tangible, you will pursue the metrics that are more obvious, and that isn't always hiring a diverse workforce, unfortunately. And then we can talk about, maternity, paternity, flexible working, those are all real, real kind of blockers, for men and women. There's a lot of men who'd like to work differently, but perhaps also feel pigeonholed and feel like they have to be the provider, or, they often, maybe they make more money, and so we're kind of penalizing men and women, but on a much more economic scale and more directly, we're obviously penalizing women more than men, in this setting. And that's obviously more obvious for people with families. For those who don't, that's, you still probably might want flexible working, or job share, or things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's still problems to solve there. It's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
Top 3 pitfalls. Where do we all go wrong as companies, as businesses trying to create a product, trying to create a thing? What are the top 3 pitfalls that you would advise us away from?
Oh, that kind of depends. I mean, we touched on data, right? So I think about not being data informed. I think we do still see that. We still have some who will go, but my wife, my mum, my whatever shops in this way. So I think not engaging enough with your market generally, as I said, either existing or potential. Over engineering, perhaps a solution as well, and I think that goes a little bit back to how we work as individuals and what also motivates us as work, in the sense that a lot of areas are commoditized or formulaic these days, because a lot of problems have been solved from a technology, from a kind of feature perspective. But I also understand why we'll both take pride and have a much more bigger interest in kind of creating those products, those services ourselves. So I think there's an element of the kind of build and buy. I've seen, a couple of, some companies that I'm aware of where they afterwards go, we should have bought rather than built, to get faster to market. And that's if you're kind of talking more startup, right? So there's those kind of things. How do you kind of look at that and not perhaps be too proud and maybe buy sometimes rather than build? A recent example was when I was at a small kind of tech, rather finance startup within a large organization, but a previous consultancy, again, I won't mention names, had been in and spent 3 months trying to build a calendar integration, and it didn't really work very well. And I came in and I asked them to integrate with Calendly, sorry to give Calendly advertising space here. And that was like 4-7 lines of code, and it worked within half a day. And, it's those kind of things that, yes, that's perhaps isn't the most interesting thing for their developers to do, but we were at a proposition testing stage. So that was absolutely the right business decision to make. Yeah. So I think it's those kind of things that you need to look at in the small and the large, the kind of trade-offs. Yeah, and then sometimes there just isn't product market fit. I think it's also, this is overused, but sort of kill your darlings or kill puppies, some people call it. Don't keep pursuing kind of more ego-driven products. And then maybe lastly, touching or back kind of on the idea of being very set on the type of features like the chatbot that you want to implement. I think too many companies I've seen have very, very different objectives to meet. And that creates a lot of waste in terms of time spent, friction between teams, between departments, not pursuing the same things because you're perhaps, top level kind of metrics, objectives, OKRs, whatever, flavor you use are actually not aligned in a way that you're running in the same direction. I think that's something I see a lot, senior management being sort of almost pitted against each other rather than incentivized to collaborate.
Interesting. And yeah, I think I've seen a little of that myself. Let's lean into that senior management piece a little bit. You've been very candid with your views and opinions so far, so really hear from you on this one.
Yeah, I'll never work again, but there we are.
we can edit it out, it's fine.
Yeah, just edit them.
Do businesses operate well, or can a business operate well with a combined chief product officer and chief technology officer, or is that something that you have strong views on? They have to be separate, maybe they should be together. What's your views?
I don't necessarily have that strong views on it. Again, I think it depends on the business, the size of the business, the problems you're trying to solve. I think I've seen examples where it actually works really well, and then I think there are examples where I think particular product teams can feel neglected if they are under more technical leadership, because often that, again, our own biases, where do we lean? And there's always the, product teams will forever suffer with having to try and prove the value of discovery of things that don't necessarily go right, testing things out. And, and I think if you don't have a leadership that's kind of on board with that, you spend money in that space to actually hit, the gold nuggets along the way. So I really think it really depends. I think if you are that person in that role, you need to be incredibly self-aware and hire a team that really can complement your own, I don't want to say shortcomings because that's negative, but complement your own skill set, right? So if I'm someone who's very technical leaning, make sure you hire someone who's much more kind of product design, leaning as your kind of deputies or your, next in line, so to speak, and vice versa, right? If you're not overly technical, well, you need people you can trust and that can really drive, really robust, technology, tech strategies and implementation. So, yeah, so I think it depends really. So is the political answer, but say.
right in the fence there. And I tend to agree, it very much does depend. And
yeah,
having held those combined roles, I very much agree with the, choose someone to fill the gaps, to fill the bit that we've all got strengths, we've all got lesser strengths. So I think it is important that you build out your team to do that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. A few rapid fire questions to wrap this one up with. Your advice for 13-year-old you?
Yeah, I thought about that. I think that's probably too young, if I'm completely honest. Yeah, I know I struggle with that one, Neil. Like, I think I'm going to have to owe you an answer. I don't know. I think, I don't think I'd do anything massively different. I just think that, mind blowing what I got to work on, what I knew existed as a 13-year-old. I'm not sure what I was thinking. As 13 is not a great age for anyone, is it? Yeah.
Okay. You do owe me that answer. I'll come back to you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Biggest influence on your career?
Oh, this is going to sound so saccharine and sweet, but I think my husband, he sort of fired the starting gun of my kind of technology career many years ago. I never really, knew that there was such a thing as business analyst, things like that. So my husband is a technologist, he's CTO, and really pushed me in that direction. And yeah, and has been a great support along the way. It's been great to have him as a sounding board, if I needed to check that someone wasn't trying to pull the wool over my eyes, or, he's also someone who is incredibly good at building teams and creating those relationships. I've really lent on him as well when I've been in doubt about where to go in certain situations. And then obviously I feel like I've had some really great bosses along the way as well, men and women, have really been very inspirational, been really supportive of me, gotten the best out of my strengths, yeah, and my teams, also teams that I managed, individuals there. It doesn't really matter, again, where in the food chain you are, I think end of the day, I'm very keen on leveling as much as you can. Obviously still some people have to make decisions that others can't, but yeah, I just, as I said, people in, people out, so that's, yeah, again, I don't mention anyone, I haven't forgotten anyone.
I like it. Good. Greatest achievement, hardest lesson?
Oh God. I don't know. I think greatest achievement, I think sometimes this is again one that's difficult to put on the CV, but I've been in some really tough jobs where you feel like there's not, you're really up against it, and you perhaps have some, you're working with some peers that are slightly not bought into what you're there to do, etc. When I have then left an engagement, I've had emails from them thanking me for having really moved their thinking along, or, and I think that's what in many ways surprised me the most, that, that it's been often that type of person rather than perhaps someone you feel like you work really well with, and I think that in many ways is a great achievement, because I think people forget the people side of change when we come in and do these transformations, that it's really about how do you leave the people feeling, and can they carry on your work, and do they want to not carry on your work because it's their work, how do you kind of bring them along? So I think that in some ways is some, something I see as a great achievement to what I do. Biggest lessons are just having made management mistakes with my people when I was younger, thinking that I had to know it all, do it all, maybe demanded too much of myself, demanded too much of others. Yeah, I think those things you kind of reflect on later. How would I have done that differently? So yeah, I think, again, having the kind of ability to grow in that space has been great, and becoming more of a leader that I would like to be. That sounds as if I was really horrible. I don't think so all the time. But as I said, I think it is just about the people. End of the day, technology is amazing, and it never ceases to amaze me what we can do with it. And it is fantastic, and we work in this industry because we're excited about it. But ultimately it's people who's building it, using it, and and that's what you kind of got to take home at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Great answer. And then lastly, we're in the locker room. What's in your locker that has made you a success? Perhaps drawing on your last couple of answers over all these years, what's made you the success that you are?
I always sort of try and remember not to take myself too seriously, but take my job very seriously. I think those are two very different things. So I think it's really important to have fun at work. I think humor is really important. I think it's a really, again, quick leveler in terms of, again, and that comes back to situational leadership as well, right? Because you've got to know when to crack a joke. And I'm not saying I've always got that right, but I think there is something about kind of trying to you know, if there is a bit of an atmosphere, or, you know, I think humor is really undervalued, actually. So hopefully other people find me funny, who knows. Yeah, so I think that's one thing. And yeah, situational leadership, I think know your audience, you know, is really important in any work, but particularly when you are in often sort of a very emotionally charged environment, as you are when you come in and have to help an organization go through change. You know, how do you, yeah. And again, that's definitely something I've learned along the way, to be much more tuned into, and therefore feel like I have much more success with it, you know. And as I said, getting those, you know, surprising but very nice emails when you leave, yeah, hopefully speaks to that.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for joining us in the room.
You're cutting out now. This is interesting. I don't know what you're thanking me for.
I don't think we got there, but really good session. Subscribe, comment, please leave your comments. Please let us know what you think of this and any of our other videos as well, so that Christina can see feedback on this particular session. But do leave your comments. Until next time, it's goodbye from Christina.
Bye. Thank you very much, Neil.
You're very welcome, and it's goodbye from me, and we will see you next time in the locker room. Take care.